The morning sun cast long shadows across the military base as Commander Sarah Mitchell walked toward the fitness center. Her civilian workout clothes gave no hint of her rank or achievements. At 34, she had learned to blend in when she wanted to, especially during her rare moments of personal time. The changing room was busy with early morning activity. Sarah found an empty locker and began organizing her gear for what she hoped would be a peaceful workout. The familiar sounds of military personnel preparing for their day filled the space around her. "Hey, new girl," a voice called out from across the room. Sarah glanced up to see a group of Navy SEALs who had clearly just finished an intense training session. Their leader, a tall man with the confident swagger that came with years of elite training, was looking directly at her. Sarah continued changing, hopping to avoid unnecessary conversation. She had learned long ago that sometimes it was easier to let assumptions slide rather than deal with the complications that came with revealing her true position. The SEAL approached her locker area with his teammates following behind. "I haven't seen you around here before," he said, his tone carrying the casual authority of someone used to being the most qualified person in any room. "What's your rank, soldier?" The way he said "soldier" made it clear he assumed she was low-ranking enlisted personnel. Sarah paused for a moment, her hand resting on her water bottle. She had faced this situation countless times throughout her career. The assumption that a woman in civilian clothes couldn't possibly hold significant rank was nothing new. "I'm just here for a workout," Sarah replied calmly, not looking up from her preparations. She had no desire to create a scene or embarrass anyone unnecessarily. The SEAL's teammates chuckled behind him. "Come on, don't be shy," one of them called out. "We're all military here. What's your rank and unit?" Sarah could feel the attention of others in the changing room shifting toward their conversation. Several other service members had stopped their own preparations to listen. The atmosphere was becoming charged with the kind of masculine energy that often emerged when military personnel tried to establish hierarchy and dominance. "Yeah, let's hear it," the lead SEAL pressed, his voice taking on a slightly mocking tone. "What are you, private? Specialist? Don't tell me you're a sergeant," he added with a laugh that his teammates echoed. The assumption in his voice was clear. In his mind, there was no way this woman could outrank him or his elite team. Sarah had spent years proving herself in a male-dominated field, rising through ranks that few women had ever achieved. She had commanded respect through competence, leadership, and an unwavering dedication to excellence. But standing there in civilian workout clothes, none of her achievements were visible. To these SEALs, she was just another service member who happened to share their fitness facility. The irony wasn't lost on her that some of the most elite warriors in the military were making the same assumptions that had followed her throughout her career. "I really just want to work out," Sarah said, her voice remaining steady and professional. She understood the psychology at play. These men had earned their positions through grueling training and proved themselves in some of the most challenging circumstances imaginable. Their confidence came from real achievements and genuine capability. The lead SEAL wasn't deterred by her deflection. If anything, her reluctance to answer seemed to fuel his curiosity and amusement. "Oh, come on now," he said, spreading his arms in a gesture of mock openness. "We're all friends here. What's the big secret?" His teammates were now fully engaged in the conversation, some of them starting to make their own guesses about her rank and position. The energy in the room had shifted completely, with their discussion becoming the center of attention for everyone present. "I bet she's Air Force," one of them suggested with a grin. "Probably works behind a desk somewhere pushing papers." "Nah," another chimed in. "She's got the look of someone who's seen some action. Maybe Army, could be a corporal or something." Sarah listened to their speculation with the patience that came from years of similar encounters. She had learned to choose her battles carefully, understanding when to reveal her position and when to let misconceptions continue. But something about this particular situation was beginning to test even her considerable patience. The lead SEAL was clearly enjoying the game he had started. "Look, we're not trying to give you a hard time," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "We're just curious about our fellow service members. It's called camaraderie." Sarah finally looked up at him directly, meeting his eyes with a steady gaze that many subordinates had learned to recognize and respect. For just a moment, something in her expression gave him pause, but he quickly recovered his confident demeanor. "All right, I'll make it easy for you," he continued, clearly pleased with his own cleverness. "I'll guess and you just nod when I get it right, deal." The changing room had grown quieter now, with conversations dying down as more people became aware of the interaction taking place. Some seemed amused by the seal's behavior, while others appeared uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. Sarah realized that her continued silence was only making the situation more awkward for everyone involved. She had tried to avoid this moment, but it seemed unavoidable now. The lead SEAL was determined to get an answer, and his teammates were feeding off his energy. "Private," he started, watching her face carefully. When she didn't respond, he continued up the enlisted ranks. "Specialist, corporal, sergeant." Each guess was delivered with increasing confidence, as if he was certain he would hit the mark before reaching any significant rank. The assumption underlying his approach was becoming more obvious with each word. "Staff sergeant," he continued, though his tone suggested he thought he was already aiming too high. "Sergeant first class." Sarah's expression remained neutral, but several people in the room were beginning to sense that something significant was about to happen. The lead SEAL's confidence was starting to waver slightly as he moved through the enlisted ranks without getting any reaction. "Okay, let's try the officer ranks," he said, though now he sounded less certain of himself. "Second lieutenant, first lieutenant." The atmosphere in the changing room was becoming increasingly tense. What had started as casual military banter was evolving into something more significant, though the SEAL didn't seem to fully realize it yet. Sarah checked her watch and realized she was running out of time for her workout. She had hoped to avoid this entire situation, but it was clear that the only way to end it was to provide the answer everyone was waiting for. The moment of truth was approaching, and everyone in the changing room seemed to sense it. The lead SEAL was about to learn something that would fundamentally change his understanding of the woman standing before him. The lead SEAL continued his guessing game, his voice carrying less conviction than before. "Captain," he ventured, though something in Sarah's steady composure was beginning to make him uncomfortable. "Major." Sarah glanced around the changing room, noting how many people were now paying attention to their conversation. She had spent her entire career earning respect through actions rather than demanding it through rank, but sometimes circumstances forced her hand. "Lieutenant Colonel," the SEAL continued, his voice now carrying a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there moments before. His teammates were still watching with amusement, but some of them were beginning to pick up on the subtle shift in atmosphere. The changing room had grown remarkably quiet. Even people who had been engaged in their own conversations were now listening to see how this interaction would resolve. There was something in Sarah's bearing, in the way she carried herself, that suggested the SEAL might be in for a surprise. "Colonel," he asked, and for the first time his voice carried genuine uncertainty rather than playful confidence. Sarah took a deep breath, recognizing that the moment had finally arrived. She had given him every opportunity to back down gracefully, but he had persisted in his assumptions. Now, the only way to end this situation was to tell the truth. "Commander," she said simply, her voice cutting through the silence with quiet authority. The word hung in the air for a moment as the SEAL processed what she had said. His expression began to change as the implications became clear. Commander wasn't just any rank, it was a significant position that commanded respect throughout the military. "Commander Sarah Mitchell," she continued, extending her hand in a gesture that was both professional and final. "Naval Special Warfare Command." The effect of her words was immediate and profound. The lead SEAL's confident demeanor crumbled as he realized exactly who he had been talking to. Naval Special Warfare Command was the organization that oversaw all SEAL operations. This woman didn't just outrank him. She was part of the command structure that governed his entire career. His teammates' expressions shifted from amusement to shock, then to something approaching panic. They had not only witnessed their leader's assumptions being proven wrong, but they had also participated in what could now be seen as disrespectful behavior toward a superior officer. "Ma'am," the lead SEAL said, his voice now completely different from the casual, mocking tone he had used moments before. He straightened to attention, his entire body language transformed by the revelation of her true identity. The changing room had become completely silent, except for the sound of a few lockers closing as people either tried to make themselves invisible or positioned themselves to better observe what was happening. The atmosphere had shifted from casual military banter to something much more serious. Sarah accepted the SEAL's handshake with the same professional demeanor she had maintained throughout the encounter. "At ease," she said, though her voice carried an undertone that suggested the lesson was far from over. The lead SEAL's face had gone through several shades of red as he processed the full scope of his mistake. He had not only made incorrect assumptions about her rank, but he had done so in front of numerous witnesses, including his own team members who now had to reconcile their leader's behavior with their respect for the chain of command. "I apologize, Commander," he said, his voice tight with embarrassment and genuine regret. "I didn't realize." "What you didn't realize," Sarah interrupted gently but firmly, "is that rank isn't always visible in civilian clothes, and that assumptions about who belongs in what position can lead to exactly this kind of situation." Her words weren't delivered with anger, but with the kind of measured authority that made them more impactful than any shouting could have been. This was clearly not the first time she had dealt with such assumptions, and her response demonstrated the leadership skills that had earned her position. The SEAL's teammates were now standing at various degrees of attention, unsure of how to proceed in this unprecedented situation. They had gone from enjoying their leader's confident performance to watching him receive a professional correction from a superior officer. "You're absolutely right, Commander," the lead SEAL replied, his military training taking over as he recognized the need to accept responsibility for his actions. "There's no excuse for my behavior." Sarah nodded, appreciating his willingness to acknowledge the mistake rather than making excuses. "The fact that you can recognize that speaks well of your character," she said. "But I hope this serves as a reminder that leadership means treating all service members with respect, regardless of what assumptions we might make about their positions." Around the changing room, other service members were beginning to understand the full significance of what they had witnessed. This wasn't just about one SEAL making an incorrect guess about someone's rank. It was about the broader issues of assumption, respect, and recognition that affected military culture. Several female service members in the room were watching with particular interest, recognizing in Sarah's calm handling of the situation a master class in maintaining dignity while making a point. She had not humiliated the SEAL or made a spectacle of his mistake, but she had ensured that the lesson would be remembered. The lead SEAL stood, his military bearing now fully engaged as he addressed his superior officer. "Commander, if I may ask, what brings you to our training facility?" It was an attempt to restore some normalcy to the conversation while showing proper respect for her position. Sarah recognized the effort and appreciated it, understanding that he was trying to recover from his earlier behavior. "I use this facility regularly," she replied. "I believe physical fitness is essential for all military personnel, regardless of rank or position. I like to train alongside the people I serve with." Her answer carried an implicit message about leadership through example rather than separation from the ranks. The SEAL nodded, beginning to understand that he had encountered not just a superior officer, but someone who embodied the kind of leadership he aspired to himself. His teammates were exchanging glances, each of them processing the situation in their own way. Some looked embarrassed by association, while others seemed genuinely interested in learning from the encounter. "Your reputation precedes you, Commander," one of the other SEALs spoke up, his voice respectful. "We've heard about your work with Special Operations Command." Sarah acknowledged the comment with a professional nod, but didn't elaborate on her specific achievements. Her focus remained on the educational opportunity the situation presented rather than on establishing her credentials. The changing room was beginning to return to normal activity, but the impact of the encounter would clearly last much longer than the conversation itself. Everyone present had witnessed a moment that challenged assumptions and demonstrated the importance of treating all service members with appropriate respect. The atmosphere in the changing room remained charged as Sarah began gathering her workout gear, signaling that she intended to move forward with her original plan. The lead SEAL, still processing the magnitude of his miscalculation, seemed uncertain whether he should continue the conversation or retreat gracefully. "Commander," he said, his voice now carrying genuine respect mixed with curiosity, "may I ask how long you've been with Naval Special Warfare Command?" Sarah paused in her preparations, recognizing that this was no longer about casual conversation, but about a teachable moment that could benefit everyone present. 12 years in special operations, 8 years in command positions, she replied. I've worked my way up through every level of the system you're part of. The impact of her words was visible on the faces around her. 12 years in special operations meant she had seen combat, made life-and-death decisions, and proven herself in ways that commanded respect from even the most elite warriors. The SEALs were beginning to understand that they weren't just dealing with a superior officer, but with someone whose experience matched or exceeded their own. Ma'am, one of the other SEALs spoke up. We'd heard rumors about a female commander in NSW Command, but we never thought. You never thought you'd meet her in a changing room being mistaken for a low-ranking enlisted person. Sarah finished with a slight smile that took some of the tension out of the moment. I can understand that, but this is exactly why these kinds of encounters are important. She turned to address not just the SEALs, but the entire changing room, where people were still listening despite pretending to focus on their own activities. Every day, we make assumptions about people based on what we can see. Gender, age, the clothes they're wearing, the way they carry themselves. Those assumptions can blind us to reality. The lead SEAL nodded slowly, his earlier embarrassment evolving into genuine understanding. You're right, Commander. I let my assumptions override my judgment. We all do it, Sarah acknowledged. The difference is whether we learn from those moments or repeat the same mistakes. You have the opportunity to take this experience and use it to become a better leader. Around the room, other service members were having their own moments of recognition. Several women present had experienced similar assumptions throughout their careers, while male personnel were beginning to understand how their own biases might affect their interactions with colleagues. Commander, the lead SEAL said, his voice now carrying genuine curiosity rather than challenge. What advice would you give to someone looking to move into Special Operations Command? The question demonstrated that he had moved past his embarrassment and was now seeking to learn from someone whose career path he respected. Sarah appreciated the shift in his approach. Focus on competence over competition, she replied. Prove yourself through your actions, not your words, and remember that true leadership means lifting others up, not putting them down. Her advice was clearly directed at the broader lesson from their encounter, but delivered in a way that offered constructive guidance rather than continued correction. The SEAL absorbed her words thoughtfully. One of his teammates stepped forward. Ma'am, we were just discussing our upcoming deployment. Would you be willing to share any insights about leadership in combat situations? The question showed that the entire team was now engaged in genuine professional conversation rather than the casual banter that had started the encounter. Sarah recognized the opportunity to turn an awkward situation into something productive. Leadership in combat is about trust, she said, settling into the kind of professional discussion she enjoyed. Your team has to know that you've earned your position through competence, not politics or favoritism. They need to believe that your decisions are based on their welfare and mission success, not personal ego. The changing room had become an impromptu classroom, with service members of various ranks and specialties listening to insights from someone whose experience spoke for itself. Even people who had initially been uncomfortable with the confrontational atmosphere were now genuinely interested in the conversation. The best leaders I've served under, Sarah continued, were the ones who never had to remind people of their rank. Their authority came from their competence, their integrity, and their genuine concern for their people. The lead SEAL was nodding as he absorbed her words. That makes sense, Commander. I can see how what happened here reflects some of those same principles. Exactly, Sarah agreed. When we let assumptions guide our behavior, we miss opportunities to learn from people who might have valuable experience to share. We also risk undermining the trust and respect that effective teams require. She checked her watch again, noting that her intended workout time was rapidly disappearing. But the conversation had evolved into something more valuable than physical exercise, an opportunity to address issues that affected military culture at every level. I appreciate this conversation, she said, beginning to move toward the door, but I still have a workout to complete. Perhaps we'll have the opportunity to continue this discussion sometime. The lead SEAL straightened to attention. Commander, it would be an honor to train alongside you sometime. If you're ever willing to share insights with our team, we'd be grateful for the opportunity. His offer was genuine, demonstrating how completely the dynamics of their interaction had shifted. What had started as casual mockery had evolved into professional respect and a desire to learn. "I'll consider that," Sarah replied. "But remember, the most important training happens in moments like this one. How you handle challenges to your assumptions says more about your leadership potential than any physical exercise." As she headed toward the gym floor, conversations around the changing room gradually resumed, but the atmosphere remained different from when she had first arrived. People were more thoughtful, more aware of their own assumptions and behaviors. The lead SEAL watched her leave, then turned to his teammates. "Well," he said quietly, "that was a lesson I won't forget anytime soon." His teammates nodded in agreement, each of them processing the encounter in their own way. They had witnessed not just a revelation about rank and position, but a demonstration of how true leadership responds to challenges and turns difficult moments into opportunities for growth. Word of the encounter would spread throughout the base over the following days, but not as a story of embarrassment or humiliation. Instead, it became a reminder about the importance of respect, the dangers of assumptions,